Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special Rangers Four Lads program here on the channel on the network. I'm delighted to have a very special guest with us. Welcome to Euan McFarlane of Club 1872. Euan, good morning. How are you?
Good, not too bad. All the better for the result of the weekend as always. But yeah, all good. Thanks for
Yeah,
having us on.
if we could touch briefly on that, things are good for Rangers on the pitch at this moment in time and off the pitch. Everything seems to be after a period of transition, turmoil on the pitch as well. It seems to be settling down, and team are doing some nice things, and it's a nice position to be in.
Aye, it's a nice position. Obviously, it's kind of like the hat. You don't have a signing until they're holding the scarf above their heads. You don't have the trophies until you have them either, right? But so look for me, it certainly seems to be going in the right direction. But I think you made a good point, like off the pitch as well. I've been sort of very pleased to see the movements that we're seeing from the club around, fan engagement. The general approach to that's been really good. In terms of, you know the continuing the fab. I think that's a really big aspect. The various fan forums that they do. And look, they've got a bunch of workshops and different working groups and things like that for things like heritage and all those other aspects as well. That shows they care, right, and they're interested in how they come across to fans, how they can look after the fans' needs and things like that as well. But look, at the end of the day, it's all about results in football, right? And that's why we're all here, I'm sure. So, but that certainly seems to be going in that upward trajectory as well. So yeah, all good.
Yeah, it definitely is. Big things are happening with Club 1872. We're going to have a discussion. Ewan's very kindly agreed there's nothing off limits. So what we're going to try and do is unpick as much as we can. Ewan, good place to start is maybe the basic place to start is could you just introduce yourself and tell us a wee bit about your position at Club 1872?
Sure. So I'm being a director twice of Club 1872. A while ago, I'm not going to give you exact dates because I'm forgetting and I'll make a mess of them, right? But essentially, look, I came back for my second spell around about a year and a half ago now. So I'm sort of halfway through a kind of 3-year term. You'll have seen a lot in the media and some of our communications that we're looking at a big shift and change. Which I'll get to in a minute. But bottom line is for me, like I've had 20 years experience in the IT industry. So, I work for one of our major technology companies. So I've got a lot of experience on, whether it's cost resolutions, process management, that type of stuff, project management as well. So I like to think I bring a fairly broad experience into that. Personally, like everything you're going to see and hear from me is like I'm business only. Like it's just about how we make this organization as good as it possibly can be. The reason I came back is probably the most important thing, right? Like I just felt that we'd been through, a number of different regime changes across Rangers. We obviously spoke. We have a number of different owners. We have obviously a brand new set just now that I think are doing a very good job at the moment. But I really wanted to make sure that Club 1872, which I felt and I agree was very stagnant, to be honest, right? It had lost its kind of ability to go out and communicate, give a clear strategy, which is what I wanted to bring, which was how do we, move forward into a modern era for Club 1872 in terms of, what does that look like with the new owners? There's a different approach if you think about back in the days of Dave King and many share issues and lots of different fans involved. From different aspects. We had some really positive amounts of money put into the club over the number of years, but like the model I think is going to change, and I think we probably want to help our supporters, our contributors understand that. In terms of, are we likely to see many share issues in the future? I'm not sure, right? So with Club 1872, a large part of that has been a share vehicle. But we've also been a projects vehicle, depending on how fans want their money spent. So it's how do we tie that all together? We're going to be looking at a few things around, obviously, firstly, me communicating and being upfront with the new members. We've got an election campaign coming up, that will hopefully get a completely new board, alongside myself, to help with that. But then also rebranding, probably not even probably, it will be a name change, to sort of align with that new model as well. And where I think we'll focus on is, very much in that sort of heritage investment funding, helping us support the community of Rangers through, just improving that whole footprint around Ibrox. Obviously, it's history and things like that. And I think one of the great things that we've had from the club is just that openness to be part of that, to discuss how we can contribute to it. But just look, they're foreign owners, but the fact that they're very interested in, ensuring that history, that it's just a massive history, major achievements across the club over the last 150 plus years, right? It's important that those things are maintained even as we modernise as well.
So much to unpack there, Euan, and I suppose we may as well get the difficult ones out the way. You talked about coming back. You talked about Dave King and things like that. One of the biggest things in the last couple of years for Club 1872 has been the vehicle to try and buy Dave King out. It's fair to say that that wasn't well received in certain places. There's been a lack of communication at times, a lot of people just wondering what's happening, and that's led to a level of distrust. And it's a difficult thing to ask you. How do you fix that? As a director, how do you regain the trust of, especially the online community, which we are well aware can be extremely harsh? How do you get that so that people are like, Club 1872, they can do that, they'll be on that, we can fund that, we can help? How do you get that good feeling back, which it once had and was really high in stock? I mean, there were so many members, there was so much money going in, and there was a real vibrancy. There's also a laziness about the support where they want taken care of. Now, Andrew Kavanagh and the group are here. They might feel that these things aren't necessary. So that urgent need, to get rid of the owners and things isn't there anymore. So how do you, I suppose that's the biggest question, how do you recapture the imagination and the trust of the fan base?
So I think that's a really great question, by the way. And I think one of the things that I would say is it's action, right? Like, words are just words, right? Like, I think firstly, like, it is going to be helpful. Like, I'm more than happy to do interview after interview. Also, like, one of the things that we put out in our recent election campaign is I'm going to have a sort of open session for anyone to come in. It doesn't have to be a contributor. It can be prospective contributors and fans that would like to come in and meet me. I will talk to them till the cows come home. I love this stuff, in terms of, making sure we do good things for the club. But the main thing for me is, like, that's all well and good if we're not actually doing anything. And that's where I think it's been really important for us to have that groundwork with the club. And we had to do a lot of that in the background, to be honest. Like, I'm going to be upfront with you and say, look, I think over the last year when I came back, I've spoken to, I'm not even going to count them because I'll lose count, right? Different, chairmen, different CEOs, obviously across Patrick. We've had, John Gilligan, we had John Bennett. All of those were speaking to us during that process, and then eventually, obviously, the announcement came through as well. But we had to kind of work through each one of them, and there's a sort of slight in joke around having to get the slides out again, right? When we get a new chairman or a new CEO that we have to walk through, and it's all fine, right? Like, we've always had a very positive reaction to the proposal of how can we get an investment model that works in terms of protecting the shareholding stuff that we have. If we have money generated there, how do we use it? But then also from a projects aspect, how do we ensure that we do things with the club? And that's where we probably have been, to my frustration at times, more silent than I'd like to be, because I really wanted that formality in place where we have that agreement with the club to say, here's the 10 or 12 things that we're going to go and do. And obviously, as we talk about projects, we've recently announced, some of the heritage ones, whether it's the John Gregg, Walter Smith statue, you know, making sure there's maintenance and improvements to those, the facade of Ibrox, the mosaics, etc. as well. Like, for me, it's, if people see where their money's going and there's a value to it, then that's the biggest part, right? Whereas you can always have that distrust around maybe an organization that's taking money, right? And we improve our shareholding, but if they don't tangibly see some of those like more physical aspects, the things around the stadium, how they're kind of enshrined for us as well, then that's where we'll fail. But the good news is we have that with the club. Those are, you know, agreed to go ahead. Some will be quicker than others. If you think about major stadium renovation works, are probably going to be things like that we would do in closed season. Other things we'll hopefully do, you know, between now and the end of the season as well, whether it's the statues, etc. as well, which I think we'll start to see some progress on. But for me, it's constant action, constant benefit in kind for the investment that is massive, right? That we've already had, and that we want to kind of obviously push as well. So, but again, look, I'll just be communicating along the way. And the good thing is when you do have those projects launching, you know, you have before and after of whether it's a renovation work, whether it's taking some of the stuff that's in the museum, you can really tell the story behind those things as well, and that's all we want to do. I think just being upfront, honest, I'm happy to speak to anyone. Like, my DMs are open on X, maybe for right or wrong, right? So if anyone does want to get in touch and ask questions, then, you know, please let me know. And one of the good things is, like, I think just that openness has been helpful. I've had a number of people reach out to me that maybe aren't even members, but were just really curious and keen to see what we were trying to do with the club. I've met some great people over the last number of weeks that have got some brilliant ideas, and that's that kind of group focus that you get. So, like, it's not just about a one and done. These are our projects, and once we're done with them, we don't know what's next. We're constantly talking about what can we do next for the club as well. And I think when people see that, it's maybe not that kind of survivalist type mode that we were in before. So you get like a large amount of people rallying behind a big cause. So I don't expect it to be like a huge, like, I suppose, overnight success story. I think that's got to be a constant thing over a period of time. That as long as people can see those things coming through over time, you just get more and more people interested and involved in it.
Let's talk a wee bit about the heritage thing then, or the heritage investment and stuff, because people might not have heard about this. They should have done, but can you explain just a wee bit behind that, please?
Yeah, so so we've always had a split for projects and shares, right? So in the old world, when you went on and were a member, you could choose to sort of split your money into shares and into projects, right? And so roughly around about 50% split is how that works at the moment. People can choose to be shares only, people can choose to be projects only. It just depends on what their interests are, really. So at that stage, what we have at the moment is around about, at the time of us communicating with the club, I think we had about 440,000. I think it's probably closer now to about 500,000. It's between those two pots. So if you think about it, we've put about 220,000 in our most recent communication, aligned to the club in terms of this can go to 10 or 12 different projects, and that's what we'll use them for. But the thinking behind it was, look, we obviously want to have a sort of tangible output for members and contributors, right? So we know that there's a lot of work that can be done around Ibrox. That piece, I think, captures a little bit of the imagination of supporters, right? I think we all have a conversation every time we go to a game, and we look around the stadium and think, that could be better, or they could do a little bit more with that. Whether it's sort of standard stuff around the concourses, or whether it's more around the history side of things, it's a fabulous stadium. We want to make it the best in the world. Again, in terms of what it looks like, how it's how that history is connected to everything that we do on a match day and what we see. So for me, it was a little bit of a no-brainer to make sure we do those things. We have done projects in the past, but they've been quite small. So we've done some painting restoration. We've done certain, events and things like that that we could, fund. But the big thing for me was always, how do we take that scale up a huge amount in comparison, right? Where people can tangibly see it. Like I talk about the Foundation of Hearts, they have done similar things, right? It's maybe a slightly different model. But in terms of developing and building the new stand at the front, there's an sort of enshrinement of all of those things and the support that that particular organisation gives into that, and that's kind of where I want to see Club 1872, where it's like a completely symbiotic relationship around what we do. The other thing that's probably maybe not as obvious to supporters is if you do a project like that, the club is always going to be like firstly front and center focused on the first team, um the footballing aspect of the organization. And if we move from manager to manager, as we have done recently, and then we have to potentially invest in January for a transfer window, things like heritage, I'm not saying they ignore it, but they will look at it from a capex point of view and go, do you know what, that will have to stay on the back burner. Whereas actually what we get is an opportunity to do is say, like, well, actually, do you know what matters to the fans outside of the playing squad are these 3 or 4 things. These are the ones that we feel we should be doing now, rather than continually kicking the can down the road on. And so being able to sort of bring those to the table for supporters is important, rather than just constantly not being able to fund them because other things become priority.
There's lots of change being announced by 1872 regarding the running of the organisation. There's going to be elections and things like that. Can you talk us through because these are major changes. So can you talk us through that? Because some household names are leaving, and this is going to be a complete change of, I don't want to say direction, because that suggests that other people who might be leaving weren't all in for a certain thing, and I don't think that's very fair or right. But there's certainly going to be a landslide change in running and the faces behind the company and the organisation. I think that's really fair to say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that was important for that to happen as well, right? Like, I know the previous people on the board, they put a lot into this. Like, they probably accepted my criticism, right? Which it was when I came back in and said, look, we just, you've got a new regime. We need to be doing more, right? I don't understand why, okay, we had some challenging times, relationships with the club for various reasons, right? But for me, it's how do you do the positive aspects and just keep moving forward with that. And so they were all in agreement, in terms of the direction, but also in the agreement that new faces need to be coming into the table, bringing fresh ideas, right? Like, I'm happy to front it up. In terms of getting out there and communicating, I'd love help, right? Like, it's me at the moment. In terms of the other folks, have either expired or about to expire in terms of their board. So having potentially 4 new faces on our board, that alongside myself can help kind of drive this direction forward. Staying, within a good relationship with the club is going to be super important. So for me, I think that was needed. Like, I don't think there was any way around that. So for that aspect, like, I appreciate all the work that was done previously. But it's definitely, we're looking for people that I suppose understand the direction we're going in. But also like have ideas to bring to that. So it's got to be kind of positive thinking, new directors, right? That have a level of experience in some of this stuff or a passion around it. And we can do some fantastic stuff for the club if we go forward with it. So yeah, look, that's a big part of it. The other thing that I think will go alongside it, which should be of benefit for any new directors, is look, we've hired Stephen Kerr as part of a recent vote for some PR support. Stephen does some fabulous work for the RYDC, for the charity foundation as well. If you think about those sort of symbiotic relationships with the club as well, this is the same thing, right? Like, how do you, almost you think about your past in terms of the heritage side of things. You've got your present in terms of the charity work that we do today, the future in terms of our youth, right? Like, it makes a lot of sense, right, to have that sort of same sort of aspect around it. So for me, having him on board will also help any prospective board, get things done. But we are volunteers, right? So having someone who's professional to come in and sort of make sure that visual aspect and the PR support behind it is going to be a big one, which I think will be encouraging for any prospective directors as well. So
How is the relationship with the club between
it's really
Club
good.
1872 and Rangers, and how have you? What sort of engagement have you had with them?
Yeah, so we met with Andrew Kavanagh. So we, but that was a journey. Obviously, as we went through the change of ownership, so we've had pretty much constant ongoing discussions with the various directors. So I mentioned, like, when I first came back, it was starting off with John Bennett. He was not, probably about a month or so after that, he stepped down, and then you had John Gilligan coming in. So we sat down and talked through our proposals with him. And then latterly, Fraser Thornton, Patrick Stewart, when they were sort of covering it, and then obviously the takeover happened. So since then, we've been working, very strongly with James Taylor on the executive team. We've been working with Greg Mailer from a communication standpoint as well, just to sort of really build that relationship. We also have had a number of different I suppose, working groups that we've been invited into. So from a heritage standpoint, working with Robert Boyle and Greg Marshall, etc., in terms of some of the the new Ibrox regeneration project as well. So like, they've been very open. I'm probably swamped a little bit in terms of invites and trying to cover them all myself, and that's again kind of touches back to having a bit of support. But look, they're just as open as I've ever seen it, to be honest, in my entire time. So that side of things, I think, has been really good. We're also able to have very sensible grown-up conversations around the future. So, like, they know as much as we do, like, that there's probably an open question mark around the share side of things, what we need to go do there. But the bottom line is, it'll always be within the best interests of our members, our community, our contributors, as well as the potential shareholding that we do have, that it's used in the right way. So from that aspect, that's something we'll probably have to, a hurdle we'll need to look at some point in the future. But just the whole openness for me has been as good as I've ever seen it.
So what's next? I think that's a good way to kind of, what can we expect from Club 1872? What's the kind of pathway immediately that we should, as a fan base, start to see unravel?
So one of the things, firstly, is the rebrand. You're going to see a new name for it, which is probably tied more to the heritage side of things. We're going to be completely revamping the website. One of the things is, we've done a lot of comms recently and some positive stuff. We haven't really pushed, like, getting new contributors in. And I think that's probably the right thing to do, because if you look at the website, look, at the end of the day, it's out of date. There's different ties back to things that we did in the past. For me, that has to be not just updated, but relaunched with the new branding around it. We want to make it really simple. I think that, modern technology and app levels and app opportunities that you can do, whether it's Apple Pay or different kind of types of Google Pay methods, we should really be taking advantage of to make the sign up process easier for people, but also for people to actually understand what they're signing up to. So for me, it's not like, why would I go out and ask for lots of people to join up now just because we're communicating? I do want them to be very clear on the new brand, the direction we're going around these, and how they want their contributions spent, but also in a very straightforward manner as well. So that's probably the one big thing. As soon as we get the new board in place, then hopefully the good news is that for them, that will be ready for them, and we you kind of go under that new banner. But for that, we'll obviously have a brand new board, and also a members meeting and things like that to sort of introduce them to folks. I think that's probably the key for us, but also then constantly looking at what's next for the club. Look, we have a list of the projects that we mentioned, right? Whether it's the stadium renovations, the historical aspects in terms of the museum, but there's at least another list again of the same kind of size that we have with the club that we could then move on to. But as we start to talk to the club around the Ibrox regeneration, like for me, it's how big can we dream, right, around the stadium footprint, making that, you know, absolutely the best in the country, that we possibly can do, and being part of, you know, making sure that those decisions that are made around Ibrox and its footprint are as good as it possibly can be, but as imaginative and as large as well. So for me, that's going to be a big step forward for us as we bring those new opportunities to the table as well for contributors to vote on.
Euan, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I would like to invite you back on. It would be nice to have a regular kind of communication. We could touch base again and really try and keep up to date with what Club 1872 are doing. How can people find you? How can people sign up? How can people contribute and get behind what Club 1872 are trying to do?
So yeah, you can obviously we're both on Facebook primarily and on X at the moment. So Club 1872, you should be able to find us fairly straightforward. Myself, I'm on X. It's just my name, Euan McFarlane, and then an underscore because I don't think I was first in line to get my proper one. So yeah, you can find me on that. If you want to chat, get in touch with me, then I'm absolutely open to that. Drop me a wee message and happy to connect as well there. The one thing is we have the Hearts game coming up on us on Sunday, right? So we have the session, which I'll open up the office. I'll figure with the club if they want to use a slightly different location for it, but we'll put some more information out there over the next week or so, just to make sure that people that want to walk in and have a chat, understand anything about me or the direction we're taking, then I'll be able to do that and fill them in on those items. And again, nothing's off the table there either, right? So I just want to make sure that I'm there for people to speak to and to come in contact with. So.
One thing, Euan, I certainly appreciate your candidness and your openness to speaking to people and trying to drive this. It does take a lot of bravery to put yourself out there in front of the Rangers support, whether or not it's an article, a podcast, fronting something. We are an opinionated bunch, which is fair to say. So, and especially to take over something that you are trying to turn around and change. So nothing but praise for that. Thank you, Euan, for coming on, and thank you for your time this morning.
Right, yeah, and absolutely look forward to catching up and we can give some more updates on how we're progressing with some of those projects. So yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks, Stevie.
Yeah, we will be back, folks, and we will speak to Euan in the future. Whenever there's an update, we'll carry that as well and try and get that out. We would like to support Club 1872 and Euan in particular in what he's trying to do. Being able to help the club as a fan base and have that drive has always been a long-term goal. And we're not always going to be in a position where we do have benefactors and people that are looking after the club. So for Rangers, it's vitally important that we have a fan base that is strong and behind the club at all times, in my opinion. It may have lost its way, arguably, if you want to delve deeper into that, of how we want it to look. But when somebody's putting themselves out there and trying to do what they think is best for Rangers Football Club, I think that we should try and support that. So we will be back and we'll speak to you in the future. Thank you for joining us on Four Lads and Dream podcast. Take care for now.
The Four Lads podcast is sponsored by Rhino Express, Clydeview Joinery, Athol Industrial Solutions Limited, and CSD Air Conditioning, in partnership with Black Rooster and Art of Gold. Thank you for listening to or watching the podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.